Imagine entrusting your life savings to the most reputable financial advisor on Wall Street. He delivers monthly reports showing consistent profits, year after year, decade after decade. He's the chairman of NASDAQ, a philanthropist, a member of exclusive clubs. Even Steven Spielberg and Kevin Bacon trust him. Then one day, in December 2008, he calls his sons to a meeting and says, "It's all a big lie. It always has been." Bernie Madoff had just confessed to the largest Ponzi scheme in history, $65 billion that never existed. 30 years of perfect fraud. Thousands of victims. Families destroyed. And the most shocking part? It could have gone on forever if it weren't for the 2008 financial crisis. Today we will reveal how a respectable Wall Street man stole more money than any individual criminal in history and deceived even the world's most sophisticated investors. Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born in 1938 in Queens, New York, the son of working-class Jewish immigrants. Bernie was ambitious from a young age. At 22, in 1960, he founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities with $5,000 he earned as a lifeguard and sprinkler installer. It wasn't much money, but Bernie had something more valuable: charm, confidence, and a natural talent for making people trust him. During the 1960s and 70s, Bernie built a legitimate reputation. His firm specialized in market making, buying and selling stocks for other brokers. Bernie pioneered the use of electronic technology for trading, helping to create what is now NASDAQ. He was respected, innovative, and his business was perfectly legal. This is important. Bernie Madoff did not start out as a criminal. He built a legitimate career first. And it was precisely this reputation that later enabled the greatest financial crime in history. In 1990, Bernie Madoff was a Wall Street titan, former chairman of NASDAQ, advisor to the SEC, the Securities Commission that was supposed to oversee him, member of exclusive golf clubs, a philanthropist who donated millions to charity. He had a simple formula: consistent returns, usually between 10 and 12% per year. Never too extraordinary, never flashy, just consistent, year after year, without losing money, even when the market fell. It was every investor's dream. Before revealing how Bernie did it, we need to understand what a Ponzi scheme is. The name comes from Charles Ponzi, an Italian who in the 1920s promised absurd returns in 45 days. But the mechanics are simple and brutal. Step 1. You promise high returns. Step 2. When old investors want to withdraw their money, you pay them with money from new investors. Step 3. Use this success to attract more investors. Repeat until it collapses. There is no real investment. It's just a redistribution of money. Here's the trick. Ponzi schemes work perfectly until they don't. As long as more money is coming in than going out, you can maintain the illusion. Bernie was a master at this. He encouraged clients to leave their money invested. He said it was better for tax optimization. In reality, the fewer people who withdrew their money, the less new money he needed. And Bernie had another brilliant strategy: exclusivity. He didn't accept just anyone. You needed to be introduced, to know someone. This created desire. People begged to invest with Bernie. And unlike other Ponzi schemes that promised 50%, 100% returns, Bernie was conservative, 10 to 12% a year. It seemed realistic. Better than the market average, but not impossible. This made intelligent people not question it. After all, 12% wasn't absurd greed. It was just good. And the reports Bernie sent were perfect, detailed, with complex strategies explained. Split strike conversion strategy. It sounded professional. Nobody really understood it, but Bernie was the expert, so why question it? Bernie operated his Ponzi scheme for over 30 years. Let that sink in. 30 years. He started in the late 1970s or early 80s. Nobody knows exactly when. For 3 decades, Bernie stole from thousands of people. And he was meticulous. He had an entire floor of his building dedicated exclusively to the fraud. The 17th floor. Restricted access. Only trusted employees could enter. That's where the fake reports were created. Frank D. Pasquale was Bernie Madoff's right-hand man in the scheme. For 25 years, Frank created the fake transactions. He had software that generated fictitious trades retroactively. If Bernie promised 11% in 2005, Frank would create a history of stock purchases and sales that would justify exactly 11%. Dates, times, prices, everything was invented. And here's the irony. Many of the stocks that Bernie claimed to have bought, he never actually touched. The money simply sat in regular bank accounts. But how did Bernie get away with it for so long? First reason, the SEC investigated Bernie 5 times and never found anything.
Why?
Bernie was the former chairman of NASDAQ. He was Wall Street. Regulators assumed he knew the rules. Second reason, Harry Markopolos, a financial analyst, realized that Bernie's numbers were impossible as early as 1999. He repeatedly warned the SEC for 9 years, with mathematical evidence. The SEC ignored him every time. 9 years of wasted warnings. Third reason, Bernie had the perfect psychological profile for the crime. He wasn't flashy like Jordan Belfort. He didn't try to appear like a genius like Elizabeth Holmes. He was boring, respectable, a family man. He had lived in the same house for decades. He didn't show off. This normalcy was his greatest weapon. Nobody suspects the quiet neighbor.
And Bernie cultivated this.
He donated to synagogues. He participated in charity events. He was an active member of the Jewish community. He used religious and cultural trust as a shield. Bernie Madoff's victims were diverse, but they had one thing in common: trust. Steven Spielberg lost millions. Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick lost their life savings. Elie Wiesel, Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate, lost $15 million, and his foundation lost everything. Sandy Koufax, a baseball legend. Larry King, John Malkovich. Celebrities, yes. But most of the victims were ordinary people who entrusted their retirement savings to Bernie. Willard Foxton was a British businessman. He invested everything with Bernie through an intermediary. When he discovered he had lost everything, Willard was devastated. He tried to recover some of his money. Nothing. In 2009, months after the scheme was revealed, Willard Foxton committed suicide. He left a note directly blaming Bernie Madoff. And Willard wasn't the only one. Thierry de la Villehutchet, a French investor who lost $1.4 billion of his clients' money, also committed suicide. Bernie didn't physically kill these people, but he is to blame. But there was another group of victims, charitable organizations. Bernie specifically targeted Jewish foundations.
Why?
Because sharing faith created instant trust. The Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity lost everything, $15 million that helped Holocaust survivors. Hadassah, a Jewish women's charity organization, lost $90 million. Yeshiva University lost $110 million. Bernie stole from institutions that fed the hungry, helped the sick, and educated children. This wasn't just greed. It was a betrayal of his own community. September 2008. The financial world was collapsing. Lehman Brothers had gone bankrupt. The market was plummeting. And here's the problem with Ponzi schemes. They need a constant flow of new money. When the crisis hit, Bernie's investors began withdrawing funds. They needed money to cover other losses. In weeks, Bernie received requests for withdrawals totaling $7 billion. He only had $300 million in cash. There was no way to continue. 30 years of perfect fraud were about to end. December 10th, 2008. Bernie called his 2 sons, Mark and Andrew Madoff, to a meeting in his apartment. They worked on the legitimate side of the business and were unaware of the fraud. Bernie was exhausted, defeated. He looked at his sons and said, "It's over. I'm finished. I'm basically just a big Ponzi scheme." The sons were in complete shock. The next day, they hired a lawyer, and that lawyer called the FBI. Bernie Madoff was arrested on December 11, 2008, in his own home. The arrest of Bernie Madoff shocked the world. Global headlines. How could someone so respected have stolen $65 billion? Investigations revealed the absurd scale. For 1,800 direct clients, but through intermediary funds, potentially tens of thousands of indirect victims. Bernie had stolen from 136 countries. It was global. And when auditors began to investigate, they discovered that Bernie simply kept lists in Excel spreadsheets. There was no sophistication, just simple lies on an industrial scale. Bernie si declara culpado em marco de 2009. Elie neo lutu. Admitiu ons acusicos federais. Fraude, perjurio, robo, lavagem de dinheiro. M. Juno de 2009, o juiz Denny Chin do Sentenca, 150 anos de prisão. Bernie tinha 71 anos. Moriria na prisão, sem qualquer chance de liberdade. E o juiz foi claro. O objetivo aqui é enviar uma mensagem. Este foi crime extraordinariamente mau. 150 anos neo era justica, era simbolismo. Bernie nunca sairia. But the Madoff family tragedy didn't end with Bernie in prison. Mark Madoff, the eldest son who reported his father, never recovered. He was sued, investigated, and hounded by the media. 2 years after his father's arrest, in December 2010, on the second anniversary of Bernie's imprisonment, Mark Madoff hanged himself in his apartment while his 2-year-old son slept in the next room. He left a note blaming Bernie. Andrew Madoff, the other son, developed cancer and died in 2014 at the age of 48. Bernie's wife, Ruth, lost everything and lives in isolation. Bernie Madoff spent his final years in the federal prison in Butner, North Carolina. He gave a few interviews, always trying to justify or minimize his actions. He claimed that the victims knew it was too good to be true. He blamed their greed. He never accepted full responsibility. On April 14, 2021, Bernie Madoff died in prison at the age of 82 from kidney failure. He served only 12 of his 150-year sentence. But he died in prison alone, hated. His family destroyed. His name synonymous with betrayal. Bernie Madoff's legacy changed Wall Street forever. Following his collapse, the SEC implemented massive reforms. Stricter auditing of investment funds. Rules regarding asset custody. Mandatory transparency. Irving Picard, the administrator of the Madoff case, managed to recover approximately $14 billion of the $65 billion lost. Victims received something back, but many recovered only 50 to 70 cents on the dollar. Billions simply disappeared, spent by Bernie over decades. But the question everyone asks is, how to avoid falling for a Ponzi scheme? First lesson, overly consistent returns are suspicious. Markets fluctuate. If someone never loses, it's a lie. Second lesson, verify the custody of your assets. Bernie controlled both the investment and the custody, a huge red flag. Third lesson, if you don't understand the investment strategy, don't invest. Split strike conversion sounded impressive, but nobody really understood it. That should have been a warning sign. Fourth lesson, exclusivity is a manipulation tactic, not a sign of quality. Bernie made people feel privileged to be able to invest. This shut down their critical thinking. Fifth lesson, don't blindly trust reputation. Bernie was the former chairman of NASDAQ, and yet he was a thief. Titles are impressive, but the numbers need to make sense. And the final lesson, if you report fraud to the authorities and they ignore you, persist. Harry Markopolos was right, but he was ignored. If the SEC had listened, billions would have been saved. Bernie Madoff wasn't a criminal genius. He was simply a persistent liar who exploited trust for 30 years. His strategy wasn't sophisticated, it was audacious in its duration. And it worked because he understood something fundamental about human psychology. People want to believe. They want to believe they've found the perfect investment, that they know someone special, that they deserve exclusive returns. Bernie fed that illusion, and thousands paid the price. If you enjoyed this investigation into the biggest Ponzi scheme in history, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We've already investigated Jordan Belfort, Elizabeth Holmes, and Sam Bankman-Fried. Each video shows a different type of fraud. Together, you'll learn how to protect yourself from any financial scam. And remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Always verify. Always question. And never blindly trust anyone with your money. Until the next investigation.